I understand why the Right Honourable Lady doesn't want to answer questions about the terrible choices the government have made. It's because the truth is ugly. The truth is that this is a punishment meted out to people who don't vote Labour. It's the same punishment meted out to parents who send their children to private schools. It's the same punishment meted out to the owners of small businesses.
Angela Rayner has crossed all limits and individuals are incensed over it. Her comments were so nauseating that indeed, Saint fizzled to guard them. Angela includes a notoriety for saying preposterous garbage that continuously gets her an inconvenience. But what did she say this time that was so crazy that has the Labour Party in shambles? It's a blend of being conditioned hard of hearing and unadulterated daydreams sprinkled with lies.
And many people might not know, Mr. Speaker, but the Honourable Member was the Minister for Growth when, under Liz Truss, inflation was 11.1% and growth flatlines. So we're doing much better than he did.
Well, the truth is that this, well, actually, thanks to the I'd like to thank the Honourable Lady for her standard charm. The truth is, this government isn't doing anything to bring down inflation. This government is stoking inflation. First, we had above inflation pay rises for the unions. Then, we had a budget which the OBR said would increase inflation.
She came in all short-terminating shots at the traditionalists, but small did she know that these comments would win her appropriate backfire and mortification. Alex Burgart was mindful of Angela's strategies and he completely decimated her within the parliament. This was fair. The starting as Angela before long lamented being condescending. She attempted her best to wiggle out of the circumstance with more avoidance and lies, but able to all figure how that turned out.
This morning, we had city economists, real economists, Mr. Speaker, saying that next year inflation would hit 3%. Does the Right Honourable Lady agree that this government's decisions mean higher inflation for working people?
Mr. Speaker, I'll ask the Honourable Gentleman, 11.1% or 3%?
Indeed, Rachel Reeves isn't secure as Alex takes shots at her CV lying outrage, whereas making a joke out of Angela Rayner, 2 winged creatures and 1 stone lovely. Much each financial specialist has concurred with Alex swelling is awful, and it's as it were aiming to get more regrettable with time in the interim Starmer and his Gangela counting Angela are caught in another gigantic embarrassment, uncovering them to be charlatans. Angela tries to fault the Tories once more by comparing current swelling to the past, but that's clear untrustworthiness.
We've already talked about Ukraine, Mr. Speaker. It was Ukraine and COVID that drove up inflation. This government is doing it to the British people. High tax, high inflation, low growth, low reform. There's a word for that, Mr. Speaker. It's Starmerism.
A worldwide widespread and a military struggle where the Raynerson expansion was so tall beneath the final government. What pardon does this government have the way Angela is talking? They have no excuse at all. She's incapable to defend any of the affirmations against the Labour Party, and it as it were appears how blameworthy they are. Tall assess mode development. No change. Starmerism could be a fitting term for it, and after that there's the issue with the ranchers. Angela had the dauntlessness to claim that agriculturists were cheerful with the legacy assessed climb.
His party couldn't even get the money out the door for farmers, failing to spend over 300 million on farming budgets. The farmers know they ruined it for them, and that's why we're in government and they're not.
Well, perhaps the Right Honourable Lady thinks that everyone came to London yesterday to thank the government.
Or diversion. That's so ordinary of Angela Rayner. She attempted to play the fault amusement and it quickly reversed discharges. Agriculturists have been striking for weeks, presently requesting that this government ought to be booted. How out of touch with Rayner Liddy is Angela that she can't see that straightforward truth? Tragically, this can be nothing. Unused time and time once more, Angela has made shocking explanations, and she's been mortified for it each time. You wouldn't accept the kind of manhandle she towards the traditionalists a long time back. It gets words as Alex uncovered Angela and Storer's vile arrange.
This is just another part of the budget that's unravelling, Mr. Speaker. Everyone here and all the farmers at home will have heard there was no guarantee there. We know what that means. They're coming back for more. And even if the Honourable Lady had made a promise today, it wouldn't have been worth a fig. We know that the Environment Secretary before the election promised the farmers this wouldn't happen. Labour promises get broken.
They're not too bad. Approximately what they've done to the agriculturists in reality, they're likely aiming to twofold down on it. No place has Angela denied any assist burdening in Rayner's, and it, as it were, demonstrates that this government is out to create things more regrettable for everybody, tragically. Indeed, their guarantees are useless. So there's small consolation there since they've broken lovely much each single guarantee they've made. But why are they doing all of this? Do they fair despise the British Open? Everything Angela Rayner and STA have done, so distant is dishonorable and totally reprehensible. They know there's no defense for it, and that's why they keep running absent from questions. Starmer is flying off to other countries, and Angela is as well active being a charlatan. There's a chance that Starmer might get freed of her for costing him £1 billion Raynerly. You can indeed envision what other inconvenience she's gotten into. They're rebuffing those who didn't vote for them, and it won't conclusion well for them conservatives. A few a long time back, it gets words as Alex uncovered.
With £1 billion blow to Starmer push for growth. This is already, the wheels are coming off his plans for growth. This is humiliation for Labour as a £1 billion investment has been pulled after Angela Rayner's attack. So P&O Ferries owner DP World pulled a planned announcement of £1 billion investment in his London Gateway container port following criticism by Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner.
Keep in mind, the full campaign Starmer and Rachel Reeves are running with the modern budget. They've been attempting to cover up the silly mess of a budget by claiming that they're pushing for development, and they can indeed do that, right? Angela Rayner went ahead, opened her mouth, and fetched the government an amazing $1 billion worth of venture. She's never been shrewd with words, has she?
Sultan Ahmed bin Salayem will no longer attend the event after Miss Rayner called P&O Ferries unscrupulous and exploitative. Oh, they're unscrupulous and exploitative. So this shipping company, ferry company, it sparked controversy in 2022 when it sacked 800 employees and replaced them with cheaper overseas agency staff.
Angela begun bashing the exceptionally company that was looking to contribute in Britain, which was no little speculation either. We're talking £1 billion at first parcels of modern employments, and potentially even more venture. Who would have thought calling potential commerce accomplices exploitative isn't the leading of thoughts? And presently Angela is being legitimately derided for it by everybody. What's genuinely confusing is that she hasn't been terminated. However, there was a way to handle the circumstance apart superior, but that's anticipating.
It doesn't matter why they did it, does it? It's their decision. They've got their own business sense, and here's Labour coming in and criticising them for running their business the way they want to, Nick.
You could say that. I would love to have heard the argument, though, with Rayner just they're unscrupulous, as you just said, and then Starmer going, "You've cost us $1 billion." It sounds like Dr. Evil. Anyway,
Angela and the Labour Party might have dealt with the circumstance with a part more propriety. They ought to have calmly arranged with the commerce behind closed doors to comply with British working guidelines, but no, she had to freely disgrace the company, and presently we're attending to ought to bargain with the results. The thing is, she's not off base to point out misuse, but the way she did it was fair. Complete, totally crazy explanations came some days.
When they just suddenly sacked 800 employees and replaced them with cheap overseas staff, everyone was saying the same thing, so she's not necessarily wrong, but is it naive to say on Wednesday, when there's a $1 billion deal pending, one could say it is. Or you could say it's integrity. I mean, you have two clashes of styles here. Starmer's all about pragmatism, at least on business. He's ideological at other times when he's talking about far-right thugs. But here, he's obviously trying to... Yeah, exactly. He's trying to be practical about business. She's just doing like classic Ange kind of like, I just say what I think.
Sometime recently, the billion-pound bargain was almost to be finalized, and presently it'll never be. It's inconceivably childish and juvenile of her to act this way. Aloud, she was saying what everybody else was saying as well, but once more there was a much way better and cautious way to handle this mess. How did Starmer permit this to happen? It may well be, since they're not joined together any longer, and that's concerning. Perhaps Angela is fair, a distraction for Starmer each time he makes a gigantic bumble.
Yeah, and I think this, as Nick says, this shows the naivety of the government. Angela Rayner in particular, I mean, she's picked because she's terrible. Keir Starmer was like, I need somebody there who's so dismal that even when everybody wants to get rid of me, they won't because they can see who's going to replace me.
Yeah.
So
is this what you want? And he just points to her.
Angela Rayner does something indeed more inept and draws all the consideration, and considering that she's been the agent prime serve, we ought to all be concerned of what will happen on the off chance that she gets to be in charge. Following no one needs a loose-mouthed and candidly youthful pioneer who can't handle fragile circumstances. That's not to say her two-faced activity.
Rayner hires 68k vanity photographer. So this is the deputy Prime Minister, of course, Angela Rayner. And on the taxpayer, she's now got herself a rather exclusive photographer just to follow around and snap. And now this is not entirely unusual. A lot of prime ministers have this. They have done in recent times, last 10, 20 years. However, it's the first time a deputy prime minister has had such a thing.
That's right, when she's not saying crazy babble. She's doing strange things. In what world does a delegate prime serve require an individual picture taker? Of course, it'd be fine on the off chance that it were at her individual cost, but figure who's paying for all of this. The whopping £68,000 were paid for by your charge cash Starmer whimpers approximately the require for more charges, and how the broader shoulders ought to bear the burden, but paying for Angela's picture taker shouldn't be our duty.
Like, for instance, that she was gifted by Lord Ali a holiday, or she refuses she does so.
And I will just add on that as well, she had 5 nights in what looked like a really high-end apartment in Manhattan overlooking the park on New Year's Eve, either side of 5 nights, and she said that she guessed that the overall price of that was £1,250.
It fair keeps getting more regrettable. Angela has had a number of exceptionally costly endowments from the magnanimous elites. She isn't alone in this, as Starmer and Rachel Reeves aren't any superior, of course, in case Master Ali is giving her completely supported getaways to unused York and in costly flat. He's getting way better approaches in return. It's inconceivable to deny that Labour is intensely one-sided, and they aren't beating the cronyism charges any time before long. There's a greater issue at play here, and it's an ethical issue.
And do you know what? Angela Rayner in particular spent 14 years calling Tories scum for doing things very similar to this, and now she's reaping the rewards of being in high office. She has no leg to stand on whatsoever. This is no surprise. The optics are terrible. The only thing that looks stupid is the emotional...
Angela Rayner has utilized appalling non-parliamentary Angela Rayner for a long time when bashing the Tories over cronyism. Isn't it the stature of craziness and lip service that she's doing? The same presently, the esteem of the endowments she has gotten will stun you. Angela appears to think that there's distinctive rules for her, but the individuals won't stand for such twofold benchmarks. Her words and activities have totally destroyed her validity.
Basically, the honeymoon period has been a bit odd for Labour, hasn't it? It should have been an absolute delight and a wonderful time for them, but instead it's been more like one of those honeymoons where the bride brings her parents along, and everything's sort of falling apart, and particularly with money scandals, which is very typical of the Labour Party, of course. What they're kind of known for is it tends to be money scandals, and we're hearing about Lord Ali holidays, as it sounds like a scheme in itself.
It's concerning and dishonorable that we've seen so numerous cash outrages come out of this government in such a brief sum of time. Laborers in shambles, and there's no telling how long they'll chuckle in office. One thing's for beyond any doubt, nobody's aiming to vote for these individuals, particularly Angela Rayner.
All of this just feels a little bit hypocritical. I'll just run through some things. Rachel Reeves has accepted £7,500 in donations for clothing, and she registered it as support for her office, which I'm not sure why that is support. But okay, Angela Rayner has accepted clothes worth £3,500, registered as donations in kind.
Angela Rayner, who's given a speech to Labour members in which she described the Tories like this.
You cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynistic...
within the another races, calling it a small bit hypocritical, may be a liberal, modest representation of the truth on the off chance that your government is getting blessings within the shape of dress and getaways. What does that tell you? Almost the judgment and genuineness of the government. Tragically, this can be nothing unused. Angela and Starmer overseen to trick everybody and won the races, but this behavior is commonplace of them. Angela has made indeed more regrettable explanations within the past, and she wishes that individuals would disregard them of outright disfavor.
Angela said those words. She takes a different approach to me. We have different approaches to how we get our messages across. It's not language that I would have used.
Keir Starmer did indicate he would be speaking to Angela Rayner. Other big Labour figures were tiptoeing around the row.
Should politicians be using language like racist scum?
Personally, I would not use that kind of terminology, but obviously everyone's got to express themselves in the way that they think.
Those are words you'd anticipate to listen from an inebriated individual in a bar, not the appointee prime serve. It's totally unsatisfactory that a lawmaker of that tall standing ought to get absent with saying things like these. Indeed, Starmer couldn't protect her words and separated himself from her. What's more is that afterward the Labour Party totally pushed Angela to the sidelines.
But if the two of you were talking about it so amicably, that means he came into this conference basically ignoring what you wanted. And the slogan for the party conference says together and the future. How are people expected to believe that you and Keir Starmer are together for the future when you can't even apparently agree on the present?
The aggregate of the Labour Party separated themselves from Angela since they knew a solid backfire was coming. Tragically, Angela chosen to be improper almost did, and multiplied down harder than you'd anticipate indeed, on the off chance that she had a substantial point and needed to criticize the government of the time. She ought to have done so in a gracious way, something the Labour Party claims to be right after this mess. Starmer begun disregarding her, and it appeared how disunited they are. Starmer totally ignored her conclusions, and Angela was cleared out.
As chair of the conference, Margaret Beckett, when she opened yesterday, talked about civility. So did the General Secretary, David Evans, when he made his speech. You said last night, we cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynist, absolute pile of banana republic, Etonian piece of scum. Is that the kind of civility that the Starmer-Rayner Labour Party envisaged?
Sing over it. It was not a great hunt for Labour when the two individuals who were assumed to lead the party can indeed see eye to eye. Starmer totally finished a range she was hoping to present, which fair appears how Starmer doesn't believe her any longer, no matter how much Angela tries to cover it up. The truth is horrendously self-evident. The Labour Party sees her as a risk and would get freed of her the primary opportunity they get, as the Labour Party is all around civility and imagining to be noble, but when it comes to really carrying on that way, Angela Rayner had put the whole party to disgrace. Her shenanigans are never finishing, and it's humiliating for her. Starmer, will she ever apologize for this behavior? Of course she attempted to protect her words and fizzled wretchedly.
What I was trying to get across, and this is and it is my passionate way in which I do it, is the anger and frustration that people feel when you have a Prime Minister who has said things and not apologised and that are racist, that are misogynistic, that are homophobic.
Energy and outrage can be communicated in a respectful way. Does she think we're imbecilic? This is often the lady who's gunning to be the another pioneer of the Labour Party. Britain's really destined in the event that that ever happened. Let's fair accept that the prime serve of the time did say bigot, misanthropic, sexist, and everything appalling. Beneath the sun does the shocking behavior of one legitimize her behavior. Angela is multiplying down and being persistent indeed, in spite of the fact that she knows she's off base indeed. In the event that she was given the opportunity to apologize and appear a few enthusiastic development, she'd likely make things more awful.
Now that is a phrase, and let me contextualise it, it's a phrase that you would hear very often in northern working class towns that we'd even say it jovially to other people. You know, we say it's a scummy thing to do. And that, to me, is my street language, as you would say, about actually it's pretty appalling that people think that's okay to do.
Angela Rayner thought the British Open is doltish, and she likely still does think that her defenses are bizarre at best and completely childish at worst. It's like observing a little child attempting to clarify why they shouldn't be held responsible. Her road, Angela Rayner, isn't welcome within the parliament of this Grainert country, and there ought to be no two ways. Almost at nobody's buying the pardon that the words she utilized aren't really awful.
But would you like to take this opportunity perhaps to apologise to the 14,000 people in Ashton-under-Lyme who voted for a Tory and the Tory scum that you describe, by suggesting, and now you're suggesting, that somehow their choice, they made a choice to be racist, homophobic, and scummy.
She was given an appropriate chance to require back her words and apologize for the mess she has crainerted, but tragically Angela isn't developed sufficient to do that. What she said was deeply insulting, and it's nothing great she disregards the whole country willy-nilly and gets absent with it. Possibly that's why individuals are so angry and requesting responsibility from this whole government.
Acted in that way, and if the Prime Minister wants to apologise and remove himself from those comments that he's made that are homophobic, that are racist, that are misogynistic, then I will apologise for calling him scummy.
Oh, come on, come on.
No, I'm very serious.
You could just deal with it. You could just deal with it very simply by saying, I'm sorry about this.
Honestly, I'm really serious about this because I feel really passionate about the fact that when you've got a Prime Minister of the country that thinks it's okay to use the language that he's used, then that is appalling. That is appalling.
Everyone's off base, but Angela Rayner, that's the attitude she lives with. Isn't it ironic that she's talking around horrifying Angela Rayner, whereas herself utilizing indeed more horrifying Angela Rayner individuals have had sufficient, and this Labour government appears to be on borrowed time, be it her past comments or the altogether more awful most recent comments around the economy and the farmers. Angela is in emergency mode. Possibly presently she'll at last apologize and set her act straight, but for that to happen, we require your bolster, so just like the video and subscribe to the channel for more.